Thank you for having me. My name is Francis Mbuvi. I come from Nairobi, Kenya. I have served at a ministry called Made in the Streets, and now it's called REMADE. We serve children who are street connected, and we reunite them with their families so that they can have a better life. So I'm glad to be able to share with you this morning and to fellowship with you some of the things that God continues to do. The ministry started some years back in the year 1995, and we have seen hundreds of children come through our ministry and be able to become important members of our society. You know, many of the children that we serve come from the slums of Mathare. One such number of children is a lady called Husna and Swin. They were born as twins. And they grew up well until they got to the age of 7 or 8, and then there were other siblings in the house. And they were living in this small house. And things started becoming hard as more siblings came in, and the father was not able to provide. And as time progressed, he started to get drunk, and sometimes he would be verbally abusive, and sometimes he would be physically abusive, both to the kids and to the mom. And sometimes he was not even able to provide for the food that the children needed. And that led to Usna and her twin running away and going to the streets. After all, they thought the streets would be much better and things would be good for them. And they had lived in the streets for 3 to 5 years. And during this time, you know, things were difficult for them. You know, being on the streets is not the easiest place for children to grow. And so in the end, Usna and her sister, you know, were found by part of our team at REMADE. And they were invited to our center in our place we call Eastleigh, you know, where they were invited to, you know, take a shower and just be young people. And they were brought into our transition center and given some education, and we helped them to learn and to develop themselves. And a time came when the government changed, and they brought in a new law that said every young person deserves to be in their families. And for us who had served these young people on the streets, we were a little bit, you know, worried. But as we did our studies, even through the Bible, we came to realize the importance of children being in their families. Even as we have seen this morning, children being dedicated in their families and, you know, us being part of that big family. And so we delved into changing, and we changed to being a ministry that goes out to reintegrate these children with their families. So for Usna and her twin, we decided to do a background check and family assessment. And our team made numerous visits because, as I had said earlier, the father who was drunk needed to be guided to become much more responsible. And we needed to ensure that once we reintegrate this child or these children, they would not be able again to run away to the streets, and that the father would be able to take care of them. So last year was the last visit where the father had been guided, and he had been helped to find a job. And in this job, he would be able to get enough money to pay for the rent and to at least be able to provide for the food. And then we took these 2 girls back home, and they are now living with their siblings. They have 3 other young ones. So it's now a family of 5, father and mother 7. But they are all together. Usna and her sister are now all going to school, and they are growing well and doing well in school. And we are grateful to see that they are able to go back and be reunited with their families and be able to grow with that family together. And the story of Usna and her sister is not isolated, because we go back to the Bible in the book of Genesis, and Genesis chapter 45. And I'm sure many of you have heard the story of Joseph. Joseph, the beloved, and how the father came and gave him a coat. This coat, the brothers did not like him because of that coat. And somehow, one time Joseph is out there going to look or to take food for his brothers. And the brothers are like, oh, here comes the person who is loved more than us and who has a better coat than us. And they decide to take him. At first they wanted to kill him, but then we know that there were people, merchants going to Egypt, who later bought him. And in Egypt, you would think things would be easy, just like some of the story of Usna and her sister being on the street and thinking things will be easy. But once Joseph got to Egypt, we know that things got even harder. He got a job in Potiphar's home. And as he's doing his work, then he's tempted again by the wife, and he's thrown in jail. It's like, wow, how many obstacles can one person face? Isn't it enough that the brothers hate him? Isn't it enough that they have sold him? Isn't it enough that Potiphar's wife has accused him? Now he's in jail, and he stays in jail for some time. And while in jail, he helps those two people, and later on, Joseph was able to come out of the jail, and he became someone who helped Egypt a lot. Egypt became a place where he guided the whole country to be very successful in a time that was difficult for them. Eventually, the brothers in their home, the ones who had sold him, decide to go looking for food. After all, famine had invaded not just one part, but a large part of the country. And so they decide, we are going to go and look for food. So they go down to Egypt, and while there, Joseph notices them. He notices, those are my brothers. And at first he's still mad because of what they had done to him. They had sold me, and he tempts them, and he puts them through trials here and there, and he makes them realize that what they did was not right. They made life difficult for him, and eventually, after some time, Joseph meets with his brothers after giving them a long time of hardship. And here's what he says. In chapter 45 of the book of Genesis, I'll read from verses 1 to 8, if you can read along with me. And said, then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will not be plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. I hope we can all see this big turnaround from Joseph. Having faced so many obstacles in his life, he would have decided not to accept his brothers again. He would have decided, they mistreated me. He would have decided, they sold me. He would have decided, they lied to my father. But what we find here is different. He is using the same obstacles that they had placed before him, and says those obstacles became the path to who I am today. Those obstacles became things that led me to a greater place and a greater calling. If you had not done what you did, maybe your lives would not be what they are. Your lives would have been lost. You would have died, And this leads me to what we see as a Christian family. Many of us, in so many ways, face obstacles. Our obstacles may not be the same as those that Usna and her sister faced, or they may not be the same as those that Joseph faced. But each one of us faces one obstacle after the other. We will find sometimes we get sick, and you're like, God, why am I sick? Why is this happening to me? Sometimes we don't have all the finances we need to make our ends meet, and we wonder, why is this happening to me, God? I have given myself to you. I have dedicated myself to you. Why is this happening in my life? And sometimes we don't have the answers. But I want to go back to the Bible and look at the story of Joseph and say that despite how many obstacles that may be in our way, those same obstacles may become the path that God uses to lift us. The hardships that sometimes we will face and the difficulties that we end up encountering may be the same things that God uses to bring us to a place where we can live for him and serve him. Joseph, we find he is calling his brothers and telling them, you are not the ones who brought me here. It is God who brought me here. And so whatever is happening because God has a greater purpose. We may not see the purpose at the moment. We may not know even if there is a purpose. But I want to believe that God has a reason as to why he places the obstacles that he does in our lives. There is a story of a king who wanted to see how his people were going to behave. And so he took this big rock and went and placed it on the road, in the middle of the road. And he stood aside to watch. And different people came. There are people who came and complained about the rock on the road. And they would wonder who has done this. And some would even curse you. Who has the authority to come and close this road? And some of them would walk around. Some of them would climb around the rock. And some of them would find other paths. And this one person came and saw the rock. And he wondered, why is this rock on the road? And for him, it's like, okay, I am going to try and move this rock. And it wasn't an easy job, but for a long time, he kept trying to move it. And eventually, he was able to move the rock. And under the rock, the king had placed gold beneath it. And so this person took that gold, went and sold it, and he became rich. He could have complained like the others. He could have passed like the others. He could have gone over it like the others. Usna and her sister would have complained, like, why are we growing up in the slums? Why isn't our father able to provide? Why is he abusive? They would have complained about all that. Joseph could have complained, and him complaining wouldn't have changed. But we find that whatever may have been an obstacle in Joseph's life, in Usna's life, or whatever could be right now in your life, could be the same thing that God is using to bring you to a place where you can actually live for him, honor him, and glorify him. Later on in the same book of Genesis chapter 50, later on in the same book of Genesis chapter 50 and verses 2. It says, well, sorry. It says this: Joseph threw himself upon his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physician in his service to embalm his father Israel. And so they embalmed him. That's not the verse I wanted to read. I want to read the verse that said, what you meant for evil, God meant it for good. Whatever you planned that you would sell me and take me out, God used it to save your lives. And it is through that the nation of Israel, not just the family of Joseph, but the whole of Israel was able to be saved because of what happened during that time. And so we see over and over God doing his work in a way that is beyond our thinking, in a way that is beyond our understanding. And that is what we are focusing on as a ministry of REMADE, ensuring that these children who have faced difficulties and who have grown up in situations that are, beyond imagination because of the things they have to face, that we use those same things to guide them and show them how important and loved they are, and that they can become useful and that they can become important. We see the joy that is in the life of Usna and her sister now living with her family and being able to go to school. It makes us feel so good. And there are so many others in our ministry who we know that they too need the same kind of thing to be reunited with their families so that they too can thrive, so that they too can grow, so that they too can become. And so, just like Usna and just like Joseph, we know that there will be obstacles in our lives. But when those obstacles come, when they happen, may we know that those obstacles may also become the path that God uses to do what he has always wanted to do and to accomplish so much in each of our lives. Thank you for having me, and be blessed.